end of this week in the forest by himself, having a blast, having a good old time, cooking outside on the fire at this cabin. And this one night, actually, he was saying, like, during the whole time, it seemed like he was being watched. And I guess he's experienced this before from some of the other stories he's had about Bigfooting, about squatching. But he said he kept hearing this noise, and he related it to, he thought it was hogs, like wild hogs, jumping around in the forest. It was an odd sound, while he was cooking his food and stuff. But when he'd wake up in the morning expecting, I guess hogs make a huge mess, he didn't find any evidence of any pigs that were rustling around the campfire or whatever. Anyway, so on this night, he's decided to make a huge fire because he had a shitload of wood. So he started to burn a whole bunch of it, and it was like this big roaring old fire. And he was sitting out in front of it after just eating his meal, and he decided that, you know what, I'm just going to have just a cool night in front of the fire. And as he's looking through the fire, he sees on the other side in the foresty area, just on the outskirts of his little property area of the cabin, these two little red eye shines.
Ooh.
You know when you like shine a torch on an animal and you can see his little red eyes. So he immediately sort of stands up, has a flashlight on him, and he slowly goes over and shines his flashlight in this area. Well, he doesn't see anything, doesn't find anything. And so he's like kind of looking around and flashing his light, and he doesn't see a thing, doesn't hear anything, and thinks, oh, I must be seeing things, whatever. So he goes and sits back down again, and again he sees these eyes looking at him. And he feels something like, oh, this doesn't feel right. Like, I've never experienced this before. What
does he feel? Like he's just scared, or?
It sounds like he's just feeling the dread right now. And he doesn't say, but maybe it was because of the Oz factor or whatever. A lot of this, as he's telling, he had to write a bunch down because he's so scatterbrained. You can tell, like, there's some trauma he's gone through. And it's kind of really affecting him.
Yeah, he cried for like 3 minutes straight at one point.
We'll post the video so you guys can watch on our site. If you want to
for sure.
check it out.
We'll post it up. Yeah. Anyway, all of a sudden, he feels a pair of hands clamp down on his shoulders.
Oh.
And he can't move. He is just locked in place. And it's almost like he describes almost being like frozen in his chair in this kind of trance-like state, right?
Oh. Ooh. Can he see the hands? Can he see the hands?
He can't see them. No, he can just feel them. He can't see them, and he can't move.
Oh. Hot.
So all of a sudden, after this happens, and he starts like his heart starts racing, and he's having a bad time now. He starts hearing what he calls like mind speak, like there's voices all of a sudden speaking to him in his head, and there's like a multitude of voices, not just one. And he describes it as being mind raped. Like he was like, this was like aggressively in my head and just taking over any other thoughts that I had. And it was like, you're going to listen to me and you're going to hear what I have to say.
Like the sensation of more than one entity? Is that how you describe like a hive attack?
Yeah, he said, it was like, he said it was like there was several of them and they were all speaking as one. Ooh. It was this horrible feeling.
Oh, God.
Really aggressive. So here's what these beings basically relayed to him. And so, long story short, these are the things, and he's seen them a couple of times, and like obviously there's plenty of stories about these things, again, of these predator-like beings. He referred to them initially as the Whisperers, because I guess they kind of have this chatter about them as they kind of move around the forest. But again, like these sort of, he described it as like this pixelated kind of looking invisible movement that kind of moves through the forest, right? So here's what they kind of explained to him. They said, we're the predator and you're the prey. We hunt you, and that's what it's all about. We hunt you for sport. And so what they go on to explain is that they're kind of there's three types of people when they refer to humans walking through the forest. One is your prey. Like we're hunting you now and there's nothing you can do about it. The second one is you're a pawn, which means we can manipulate you in order to help get prey, and I'll explain what that means a little bit later. And then the third one is we don't give a fuck about you. You don't interest us at all. And I don't know what sets apart people they think are prey to people that they don't give a fuck about.
I'm going to find out. I'm going to get myself in category 3 because I don't want those motherfuckers.
Yeah. I don't want to find out either. But they have these distinctions about people, and I'd love to know what that is. But he doesn't ask them, I guess.
Oh man, I want to know what that is.
Yeah. So here's what else they say. When they want to take someone, a gun is useless. There's nothing you can do about it. They obviously have these powers over your mind. So this guy, Mark, obviously he was like powerless to do anything during this whole time. He felt like he was a dead man during this whole thing. He kept saying. So like I said, humans are either prey, they're a pawn, or they're just nothing. These things don't care about them.
Oh.
So the pawns are used to lure in their prey. So what do they mean by that? That's they use, so when these people go squatching and then they're out in the forest or whatever, I guess they lure people in by making all these things. This is what this Mark was explaining. They lure people in by leaving evidence or using like the knocks on the trees and all those different kinds of things that people describe when they go squatching, right?
Yeah.
Like the whooping and the hollering and all that stuff. So, but what he describes is that the Bigfoot are basically a slave race, a willing slave race that these masters that he ends up referring to these predator beings as, these invisible or able to cloak themselves. They use the Bigfoot to lure people out into the forest so they can hunt them, basically. And it is very much like that whole idea of the movie Predator. Basically, he was like hunting people, right?
Dude, I'd never heard a more like terrible but amazing idea in my life. Like, I don't like to believe that Bigfoot is anyone's bitch, but
right.
but like predator beings, like invisible alien interdimensional entities using Bigfoot for their own, like that's just fucking sci-fi like greatness. Keep going, man. This is like everything I ever wanted in my life.
Yeah, but isn't that the whole like Predator sequel situation where there's like one of the Predator escapes the underground base and then the bigger Predator gets him, like captures, right? Isn't that, am I just making this shit up?
Wait. Oh yeah, the last movie, with Olivia.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of the last few movies kind of went off the deep end a little bit, I think. But the basic premise,
I still like 1 and 2.
They're hunters,
Sport. It's sport. There's some sort of sport to it. Maybe that's taken from. Maybe the movie's based off real life too. Maybe there's some sort of sport to it. Because why? Like they're taking some people, but they don't take others, and they go after. And they take the weak a lot, which is very predatory. And in the movie Predator, they go after the strong on purpose. So there is a difference.
Right.
So maybe that's what he didn't really explain to that guy. Like, I mean, like they could have taken this guy, but they're like, why would we do that? You're sitting here, it'd be done. It's no fun.
Yeah.
Well, basically, they told this old boy Mark that he's now prey. Like, we're going to kill you. And he asked them, like, why are you telling me all this shit if you're just going to kill me? And the arrogant kind of response he got, and he said the way they talked to him, they were using Mark's words in his head, using his own way of speaking, his own thoughts, in order to communicate what they wanted to tell him. So it was kind of a...
Whoa.
I guess you got to sort of...
I think that's schizophrenia.
Yeah. He may be crazy. I mean, he fully admits during the interview, he was like, look, I am not getting anything from this. I sound like a raving fucking crazy person talking about this, but I just want to warn people about what's going on. So anyway.
Yeah, he's doing a public service.
So Mark was explaining that, like, he used to think this was fun, going into the forest, and they would, like... And so him and his mate would go into the forest and start, like... Basically... He thought he was forming a relationship with these Bigfoot in the forest.
Oh, so it took place over time. Okay.
Yeah, it was over time that they were kind of... He describes it as being groomed for the kill. So they would lure him in and just toy with you. So they would keep... And he said every time they would be out in the forest and nothing happened and they'd get super, disappointed and go back and then be like, fuck, I don't want to go out there anymore. Something else would happen. And they'd be lured out again. Even to the point where he said these things followed him home.
Ooh, I don't like that.
And he would see this movement of these beings on his way home. He would like do these walks, I guess, and he would see this like, shadowy movement in the corner of his eye as they were following him. And he was basically getting the feeling like, oh, come back out to the swamp and come play with us again. They were kind of being lured out into it. And at one stage, he even says they refer to the Patterson Gilman film. Remember that old film?
Yeah,
the old Bigfoot.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the classic view of the Bigfoot.
How dare you ask me if I know that? God.
They said that little look around they explained to him was her trying to lure those two guys into the forest further.
Ooh, they said that to him? Wow.
Yeah, which was
that's
odd.
cool. That's cool. That's interesting.
That's when I was like,
she is kind of playing coy there.
Right.
She was like, "Hey guys," while she walks away.
Hey fellas,
flashing that ass. Yeah.
Come get some.
Pat it.
I'm pretty sure that's how Bigfoot talk.
Bigfoot
anyway,
talks
okay.
Like that. Really.
So he thought he was building this relationship, but really they were just, like you said, grooming him through these thumps, these knocks. They were finding footprints, and like I said, seeing these cloaked beings. There's like a team of these things, right? There's not just the Bigfoot. The Bigfoot they refer to as the helpers, and there's also observers, and then there's the predators. And basically the predators are the masters. And once they decide on a prey, everyone else will fall into line and help them with that prey and help them like lure this prey out into the forest.
Interesting.
Which I thought
that
this
they're
whole
in a
game.
place where hunting is for fun as well for humans.
That's what he kept coming back to. They kept, because I guess he was a hunter too, and they kept sort of showing him that him going and like hunting pigs or hunting turkeys. This is how we see you. This is
right.
They're like he kept saying like they had this really arrogant sort of pompous way of referring to us. Like they.
It's very reptilian.
What do they say?
It's very reptilian. They're feeding off his negative emotions. They like the thrill of the kill. They're actually sucking, like getting him scared is what actually is feeding them. Maybe the death is just
right.
Doesn't really matter. It's more about leading up to it.
Oh, yeah, interesting, yeah.
Yeah, that's
They're
true.
basically getting him as afraid as possible, and that actually works into something that happens at the end of the story too, so keep that in mind. All right, so they say they're toxic to humans, these masters. Not necessarily the Bigfoot, but these masters. And he said if you look at them long enough, it will do you harm. So I don't know what that means. That's kind of weird, right? They said where they come from.
Like what, they become like schizophrenic or like...
I don't know. It just says, do you harm? And he doesn't really elaborate on that. They said where they come from is toxic to humans. And that skunk-like smell that you smell apparently around Bigfoot and these creatures is the smell of them passing through the veil. And this is where they said this is how they come here. They're able to make the veil, they keep describing this veil, and it's flexible. And they can sort of it's malleable. They can make it malleable to the point where they can pass through, right? And when they do that, that's where the skunky smell comes from. It's like the sulfurous, skunky smell. Sulfurous being and oh, dude, so super excited. So he comes at this point of view as like he keeps saying like he's a Christian, right? He's very much like into the religion whole thing, and they kept describing things to him in that sort of manner as well. So they're using his own thoughts to kind of be able to telepathically describe it.
That's very demonic.
So
very Ginny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he says, I think he asked where they're from at one stage, and he said, oh, that was one thing too. He's like, when he said he asked them things, but he didn't ever talk, so he was able to kind of work out this connection telepathically, you know. So he asked where they come from. They said, consider us from under the earth, from another world, right? So under the planet. So he kind of got that as like a hell kind of, reference.
Not like
I see that
underground, not necessarily underground.
Not underground, but beneath the planet Earth.
Well,
so beneath in a different plane.
Yeah, so like the second dimension, probably. Mm-hmm. How you've ever seen that chart of it's third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. They're like maybe that's what he meant, like another plane of existence.
Yeah, right.
Where there's like lower, darker frequencies. Mm-hmm. Which would make more sense if they're going to create fear before they kill their prey, because for them to get their prey, they would need to lower their frequency.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.